Witam Państwa bardzo serdecznie. Na samym początku chciałabym zaprosić pierwszą prelegentkę, profesor Hannę Barbarę Gerl-Falkovitz. Jest to filozof, językoznawca, politolog, kierownik studiów w Burg Rothenfels, starszy doradca na seminarium Christiana Weltanschauung, teorii religii, kultury na Uniwersytecie w Monachium, a także prywatny wykładowca w Bayreuth, Tübingen, Eichstätt. Profesor filozofii na Uniwersytecie Pedagogicznym Weingarten Bodensee w latach 1993-2011, profesor filozofii religii i porównawczych studiów religijnych na Uniwersytecie Technicznym w Dreźnie. Od 2011 roku kieruje Europejskim Instytutem Filozofii i Religii w HEILIGENKREUZ pod Wiedniem. Jej kierunek badań to filozofia religii współczesnej XIX i XX wieku, między innymi Hegel, Nietzsche, Edith, Stein, Kierkegaard, Simon Weil, Romano Guardini, kardynał Newman oraz tematy związane z antropologią płci, etyka religii świata. Dzisiejszy temat będzie brzmiał następująco. W jaki sposób termin prawda wypełnia się sensem? Krytyczne podejście Edyty Stein do poglądów Martina Heideggera. Ich lade Professor Hanna Barbara Gerl-Falkovitz ein, der Vortrag zu halten. Ja, herzlich willkommen.
Liebe Freunde, dear friends, I have to speak in English because not everybody of you is speaking German, but I think a few terms within the philosophy of phenomenology I have to explain even in German because English is a different language and the birth of phenomenology was in Göttingen, Freiburg, so we have a bit to go into the depth. Is it all right? I know that not everybody is speaking English here. I apologize for that. Okay, we try. Marjana, would you give me a sign 5 minutes before I have to end because it's a bit more material. So, faith and reason, Glaube und Vernunft, have a common intention to recognize truth, Wahrheit. My essay will concentrate on Edith Stein, not on INGARDEN and neither on John Paul, but in the very end I will have a hint to John Paul II as a philosopher. Edith Stein was sharpened by the lecture of Heidegger. Heidegger was her co-student in Freiburg, a kommilitone, and culminating is her clear critiques of his conception of truth. And she indicates 9 items where she sees Heidegger's lack of understanding of human being. She criticizes Heidegger in 9 items, although she acknowledges the high level of his philosophy. I will quote a quotation because she knows who Heidegger is and she appreciates him. Anyhow, she has a strong critics. So we first throw a look on these 9 critical items in a short way. Then we proceed to the definition of truth by Edith Stein, and in the end we will find a bridge to the personalism of Karl Wojtyła. So I begin, in which way the term truth becomes senseful. What is the critics of Edith Stein of Heidegger? I start with a quotation. The ideas truth and being, Wahrheit und Sein, are correlated. To speak about truth has sense when we speak about being. Über Wahrheit sprechen hat Sinn, wenn wir über das Sein sprechen. Truth, Wahrheit, is a classical term of correlation or correspondence. In her main work, Finite and Eternal Being, Endliches und Ewiges Sein, Stein differentiates mainly between logical truth, logische Wahrheit, truth of judgment is Urteilswahrheit, and ontological truth, ontologische Wahrheit. So there are three different aspects of truth with her. There are at least two more, but I have to concentrate just on these three. Just a little seminar of philosophy we will have here. Stein discusses the remarkable fact that Heidegger used the term truth mainly in a shortened understanding. I have to correct myself in the small commentary what I gave you in the paper, because of course Heidegger has a broader meaning, but he understands Thomas Aquinas in a wrong way, saying that within the tradition of Aquinas, truth is only understood as truth of judgment. Of course that is wrong. Thomas Aquinas had a much broader meaning. But it's very interesting that Heidegger tried to shorten Thomas Aquinas to this small understanding, while Heidegger himself gave the interpretation, of course, of an ontological truth. So please keep it in mind. Heidegger used Thomas Aquinas in a way as a counterpart, but diminishing him to a degree. And Heidegger, of course, then was greater than Thomas Aquinas. Very simple. So, Edith Stein herself tries to keep to the full understanding of the term and acknowledges, of course, Thomas Aquinas, who said that truth is more the self-revealing and self-explaining being. Self-revealing and self-explaining being. Okay, I'm jumping now to the sense of being, der Sinn des Daseins. We have already a problem. In English we cannot translate Dasein. I use now mostly the expression of existence, but existence is not Dasein. In Dasein we have already the understanding of being there. That is broader than existence. Existence is very subjective. It's my existence in a subjective way. Dasein is a broader meaning. It has also the objective meaning of my existence in being. So small, it's really different. And English is not so, is not the language of phenomenology, okay? Okay. Every language has its intonations, of course. And so translation is always a difficult business. Anyhow, so Stein intended an habilitation. By the way, she asked Heidegger for help in 1932. And her manuscript Potenz und Akt, she gives impulses and reactions already on topics given by Heidegger. Afterwards, she implanted her incomplete manuscript into her masterpiece, Finite and Internal Being, in 1936. And she gave it the provocative subtitle, Essay, Versuch, of ascending to the sense of being, Aufstieg zum Sinn des Seins, a very provocative title, because she reformulated the question of being and time. She took Heidegger's intention in Being and Time to show the sense of being. And she said that she had read it soon after its publishing and had got a deep impression of it. But she was not able in 1927 to discuss it fundamentally, so she discussed it 9 years later, in 1936. In a letter to INGARDEN, her friend, more than friend, but he didn't answer her friendship exactly. In a letter to INGARDEN in 1927, she writes in a lapidary way, and now you see the acknowledgement of Heidegger, but also the critics. You have both sides in her. She writes, Heidegger is something great. He can put us all into his pocket. But this I believe too, and regard his book, Heidegger is something great, he can put us all into his pocket. Before I saw that, I did not know it respectively, I saw only the effects, that means his great influence on the young generation. So clearly, she sees his potentiality. But between the lines of her great work, 1936, she discusses continuously Heidegger's ontology in the appendix. She gives a critiques of 4 published works, Being and Time, Kant and the Problem of Metaphysics, about the essence of ground, and what is metaphysics. We do not deal with all that, but we concentrate on that, what she says about being and time. To estimate Stein's critique of Heidegger, it's necessary to deepen her own thinking in general. What is her aim? What does she want to explain in her masterpiece, Endliches und Ewiges Sein? The aim is a Philosophia per ennis, an everlasting philosophy, founded, of course, in ontology, but not only. Please keep open that she is not only repeating Thomas Aquinas. That would be much too less. She's writing in the 20th century and not repeating the medieval theory at all, in general. But she uses it as a basis to draw the idea into another aspect. I'll put it at the very end. Anyhow, Philosophia per ennis. Also Heidegger had put ontology in a new light. Both Stein and Heidegger are heretics in refer to Husserl, and Husserl was aware of that. He was very disappointed by Edith Stein in 1917. Both Heidegger and Edith Stein had left Husserl. Mostly it is not very clear. They are meeting in the aspect of correcting Husserl in a very decisive way. And Edith Stein writes about a Ketzerei, that means a heresy against her own teacher, because she, like Heidegger, opened again a discussion about ontology, what Husserl did not want to. Husserl set ontology very much apart. Phenomenology and ontology are not the same, are not in the same realm. They are even in a way very, very hard to combine. So, Stein and Heidegger opened again a discussion about ontology that was at that time overdone. It looked old-fashioned because since the philosophy of Kant, ontology was lost. So we see 2 master pupils of the same teacher, leaving the same teacher and working at the same topic with the same identical aim. And the aim of both is sense of being, der Sinn des Seins. Both are working on this sense, Sinn des Seins. Anyhow, the 2 pupils went different ways. So the critics by Stein of Heidegger. Stein tries to demonstrate that Heidegger repeatedly, always again, keeps to a mental restriction. She can show, and she shows it in her masterpiece in the very appendix that appeared, that was published only in '62. It did not appear at her lifetime. In '62, this so-called appendix to finite and eternal being appeared. Edith Stein showed that the neglection of logical consequences by Heidegger was appearing when you read him very, very attentively. Seemingly, he does not want to think an idea to its end. He started thinking in very many ways, and of course he was a genius, but at a very topic, at some topics, he's just finished an idea without going into its consequences. And he was interested in the consequences. For instance, Stein assumes in her theory about human being 2 items. One is self-transcendence. We are self-transcendent. Already language is a sign of our self-transcendence. And second, self-manifestation. That means that we are beings, that we are kind of being that is always manifesting itself in a way that others are able to read us. I'm not keeping myself closed in speaking, but also in every sign of my life, I'm manifesting myself. That means I'm opening myself, revealing in a way. Why is that the case? Because I have a living body. My body shows already what I am, but I have a soul and I cannot hide my soul. I could hide it to a certain degree, but I cannot hide it in general. And so this self-transcendence and self-manifestation can be read in my concrete existence. Heidegger would say in my Dasein. But, he does not mention neither body nor soul. In Heidegger, Dasein is without body and without soul. It is just Dasein, a very abstract position. And the question is whether this Dasein shows anything or does not show anything. Dasein is in a way closed. It has no medium to carry it, no medium to present it. So this is one of these items what Edith Stein was marking especially, because how Dasein can be interpreted if I don't interpret body, neither body nor soul. Heidegger tries to interpret it by spirit, by Geist. But what is Geist without a supporting material? So Heidegger is very abstract in this point. So this very beginning also is a lack of consideration, and human existence is already deprived of its most important qualities. So Edith Stein is here theoretically speaking about body and soul, not only about spirit. I'm jumping to the very strong critics now. Her judgment is that Heidegger had introverted the idea of transcendence. He speaks about transcendence, of course, he has to. But transcendence does not mean to transcend into another realm, but to transcend into the inside of Dasein. He's, so to say, bending transcendence into an introscendence. Very strong, very strange. So instead of trans, you are intro. That means, so he renounced the idea of self-foundation, of Selbstbegründung. He renounced the idea of self-foundation and took it into the Dasein itself without the possibility to reach beyond this Dasein. Dasein experiences being only as a border. When Heidegger thinks about Dasein, he has a strict border of his thinking, and border means, in a very deep sense, already death. Our Dasein is limited by death, of course, empirically, but also philosophically. He does not ask beyond death. So to reach the real, already there's a lack in English. I cannot differentiate between scientist and sein. In German, there are two different things. In English, I have only the word being. So Heidegger doesn't reach beyond being in a very deep philosophical sense. All that what we are thinking is bent into ourselves and does not go beyond our Dasein. So human existence is not taken in its very depth, nor in its very height. Heidegger stays within the realm between birth and death, but all the questions that lead beyond these two borders are not asked by him. So it looked like, Edith Stein is stressing that Heidegger's work began with a very keen entry into being again. That was against Husserl. Husserl was just busy with what is the character of recognizing something. Heidegger started with asking for being itself. But in consequence, this keen entry, that was a courageous entry, Heidegger went back not only to Kant, he went really back to medieval philosophy. But in consequence of his thinking, this entry was spilled immediately in a strange way. He filled it again with a lot of arguments that were not really thought to a very end. That was the impression by Edith Stein. He did not really think this idea to the very end. So her concept of ontology got into another way. I now speak about these 9 items, so these 9 objections that Edith Stein made against Heidegger. It is very short now. Okay, one can read it afterwards. But they are very prudent. She goes really into the different aspects and has 9 points of critics. In a kind of statement, she calls it Stellungnahme. She doesn't call it critics, she calls it Stellungnahme. She is not only polite, she tries to be objective, yeah. Critics is too much because otherwise she would have really entered a deeper discussion, and the appendix is also not so long. It's more or less short appendix. Seemingly, first objection, in Heidegger die Essence, das Wesen des Daseins is the same as existence. Also Essence und Existenz sind dieselben Begriffe. Das ist der erste Einwand. That means, in a moment when we have a coincidence of essence and existence, we cannot really have a development, a becoming, a development of human being. Essence is not a dynamical expression. Essence is that what it is and what it stays and what it will be. But in existence there is a development, a becoming, more than a static way of being. And if you throw that together, as Heidegger made it, then you have an astonishing neighborhood of human being to divine being. Because Heidegger, as she says, transcribes the usual qualities of God into human characteristics. In German it is, sie rückt das menschliche Dasein und das göttliche Dasein, nein, Heidegger, rückt das menschliche Dasein und das göttliche Dasein ganz weit zusammen. Also Existenz und Essenz sind dasselbe, das ist die Unterstellung, die sie bei Heidegger sieht. Und das heißt, Gott und Mensch werden fast identisch. Yeah, of course it's an attempt to divinize man. Second, I mentioned it already, the lack of body and soul in the description of Dasein. Man, or a Mensch, has no concrete existence in body and soul. But if you speak about being in world, in der Welt sein, as Heidegger does it, because that is the offense against Husserl, to be in the world before you start recognizing and thinking, we are just here. That was the very keen entry back to ontology. But if we speak about that, then exactly the question arises, in which medium you are here. How are we existing? But Heidegger has neither body as my fundamental being, nor does he have soul, and Edith Stein later on will just take both items, as well body as soul, as a main object of her thinking. Third, Heidegger's fundamental definitions of Dasein contain an element, everybody knows it, it is called Geworfensein, thrownness in English, Geworfensein. The expression is strange. In German it means Geworfensein is not being born, that is the aspect of a human birth. Geworfensein is that what animals do. So, but we are geworfen, we are thrown. In Edith Stein, the question arises, who is throwing the thrown things? If you speak about throwing, then there is a thrower and something what is thrown, but where is the thrower? And Heidegger is silent about that. To speak only about being thrown, the question arises, where does it come from? Why is our existence so strangely without an origin? Who gives the origin and who is throwing us? Fourth, in a way she admires Heidegger when he, because of course time, being in time is a kind of masterpiece, there's no question. But she accuses not thinking to the very end. The arguments are always ending in a half of thinking. And one of the masterpieces within this book is the differentiation between everyday being, also das alltägliche Dasein, and essential being, wesentliches Dasein. And Heidegger had shown, really it's an interesting part, that we live in a decadence of the existential oneself, mein existenzielles Ich selbst, to an abstract anyone. In German it is the differentiation between Selbst und Man. Man tut, Man stirbt, Man lebt, Man organisiert, etc. And this anyone, Man, everybody does the same thing. For Heidegger is interpretation of the ruin of our existence. We are not living really ourselves. We are reading in the mode of Man, of an everyday, normal kind of ruined existence. Edith Stein says in a very interesting way that this is without doubt, and she admires in a way this very strong differentiation, but she says that this everyday being, this Alltagsleben and anyone cannot be shown as ruinous forms unless being together or the community cannot be shown as a positive phenomenon. She calls it Mitsein, and Heidegger did not analyze Mitsein. If I only concentrate on the individual as a ruinous form of existence, then I have a reduction of Mitsein of the community, and community is then only the decadent form of many individuals, summarizing individuals all in their ruinous forms. But Stein, to the contrary, develops an analysis of personal community, and that is not principally unauthentic, but we have an authentic and positive Mitsein, community. And she writes a whole book about that. Very early after the war, she writes about a book about the state, how we can deal, how we can live in a positive Mitsein, not only in the ruinous form of being always in this dissipated and strange way of a ruined Man tut. Am I understandable, by the way? I don't want to speak about something what is in the very end not understandable. Is it okay? More or less, more or less. Okay, I hurry up a bit. I come to the conception of death, also Tod. Tod als Vorlaufen des Daseins in den Tod, forerunning into death. We are not only living in presence, we are forerunning in our thoughts to death. Of course, we know that we have to die. In Stein's eyes, this is an essential question, and she just thanks Heidegger to have brought back the importance of death into philosophical discussions, and she says that since centuries, death was not an object of philosophical thinking. That's correct. But again, Heidegger is ambiguous, has two sides. He does not really put the question back to its roots. On the one hand, death is represented as the end of Dasein, logically, empirical end, point of no return. On the other hand, much more interesting, Heidegger interprets death as a process within life. In German, Tod ist nicht Ende des Daseins, sondern Tod ist im Dasein präsent. Wir sterben. Ja? Wir sterben im Leben. That is what is absolutely correct. I would not die if I would not be dying all the time already. A stone cannot die. Why not? Because it is not vivid. But our vividness is just the underlying argument for the possibility to die. By the way, there's a bit of joke, what was always asked in seminary. When somebody was dead and said that Mr. So-so has died, the normal question back is, what was the reason for his death? And then we answer cancer, what is it, corona, etc. The right answer by Heidegger is, we die because we are alive. We do not die by cancer. Cancer doesn't attack a stone. Yeah? Corona doesn't attack, I don't know, no animals, we don't know. Anyhow, we die with in our life. Life is our wound. Yeah? Not a specific sickness. So, but now she says, ambiguous is when I say, and she acknowledges, that I am dying within life already, that something is accompanying me to the very end. Then I have to ask, how is the relation between my present and my future? And then I cannot say that in future I will be dead and finish. Because if I am now already in this process of dying, then the process of dying has another meaning. Why should it stop at the very moment of my death? Is not the process something what is processing further? But Heidegger closes the question and says that it's just ending up. But just ending up is not a philosophical answer. It's an empirical answer. But it doesn't analyze the character of a process. Why should the process be ending with my natural death? I see that I have now 5 minutes, so I go to the more, so these are the main critics of Edith Stein, but now I come to the very aspect of her understanding of the truth. What does she think truth to be? And that is the climax of all these researches. I give you 3 definitions in principle. What is logical truth, what is truth of judgment, and what is ontological truth, and then we end up in a 4th way where she combines these items. Logical truth is easily the correspondence of cognition and its object. There's nothing new. In a 3-fold way, she puts it also in a different way, but I think I would stress more or less the end of that and don't want to deepen it. So logical truth, the correspondence of cognition and its object. Cognition follows being. Cognition has to follow being. This is a secondary aspect. Only in God, cognition and being are identical. Second, die Urteilswahrheit, truth of judgment, is based, of course based, on logical truth, namely on the coexistence of judgment with the existing entity. Also nothing new. That means that judgment is something added to the logical truth. Yeah? Our discussing, our judging, of course, is following the first adequation. It's not so complicated. Very interesting now is the 3rd one, and she, by the way, keep it in mind, she goes beyond the 3rd already, but the 3rd is very interesting. It's ontological truth. And that's what she and Heidegger have in common. Ontological truth has to be before we get into a logical or a judgment truth. Ontological truth is adequation, Übereinstimmung, of the essence of being, vom Wesen des Seins, what it is, was ist es, with its empirical reality, how is it, wie ist es. So we are differentiating with was ist es, die Essenz des Daseins, and how is it. Now she is in the empirical form. That means ontology has to regard essence and existence, or essence and reality. It is the intellect who makes this both sides adequate. The intellect may be erroneous, but being cannot be erroneous. So we have to keep to ontology to correct our intellect. A priori, our intellect is bound to the ontology a priori, from the very beginning. That means also transcendentally. Yeah? It is not our decision. Intellect is in itself bound to ontology. That means, now it opens to a wider aspect, being is senseful and intelligible. Sein ist sinnvoll und einsehbar. That means that ontological truth is a transcendental truth and includes two items. That's very interesting now because we go to a fourth interpretation by Edith Stein, and she needs this ontological truth as a basis. So, transcendental ontological truth has two items. Being has the intention to be recognized. Das Sein will erkannt werden. I don't know whether you feel the strange aspect of it. That it means that in the Sein has even the intention already. It's not a dead one, it's not a silent one, it is not mute, but being has the intention to be recognized. It opens to the intellect of human beings. It does not stay in itself, it is not closed. By the way, it's a Platonic idea, but it is developed very, very far away already from Platon. I quote Edith Stein, "It belongs to its essence to be opened, revealing itself." In German, es ist offenbar. That means to be accessible for the recognizing intellect. It is even a priori transparent for it. And she says, to reveal itself and to be revealed is corresponding. Sich selbst öffnen, also das Sein, sich selbst öffnen und geöffnet sein entsprechen sich. That means we do not go into a mute reality. We do not go into a close empirical state of mind. Sein ist offen für den Intellekt. That's now real quotation. Sein ist offen für den Intellekt. And now we pass it. Now we come to the very end, to Edith Stein's own orientation. And here is a bridge now to John Paul. Not to INGARDEN, but to John Paul. I go to the end, I have to. I leave Heidegger now. The very end. In a specific way, Sein, being, is open to our cognition, especially our own Sein. So my Dasein is of course open in the very first range to myself. It is not closed, it is not secret in general. It's not only mute in the very depth. And in this way, that means to regard myself, I come to a question what opens another realm. The question is, and Heidegger does not put it, who gave me to myself? Because empirically, I don't know why I'm here. My parents didn't know about me, of course not. Even I myself took years before I used the word I. That means I'm not my own origin. I'm not autonomous in this sense. Who gave me life? Who gave me my body? Who gave me soul, etc.? Do not listen to that in the first way, in a religious way. It is a philosophical question. I do not know the origin of my own life. So the question, who gave me life, can be answered only in the way that I speak about another life. I cannot come from an unliving donator. That is strange to say, that my life is given by something what is not life. So the donator of my life is himself something lively. And the same question arises now, why is my life ending? Why is my life ending in death? And when we run ahead in our thoughts to our own death, it is clear, it is very clear, that we do not end our life within this absolute being cut off of life, because life is lively. And I cannot speak about life if I understand that it is combined with death. So life is in itself something what is going beyond this kind of death what we experience. And who is the donator? Edith Stein, of course, will say, and now I quote her literally, I'm going to the very end. Still more, still more, still more. Real philosophical idea has to go ahead from the acknowledgement to be given to myself. That is not very difficult. I have to say that. I'm given to myself. To the question of the donator. And a donator cannot be an etwas, something. He can only be a person, because I myself am a person. I cannot be constituted by etwas. This is a kind of contradiction. Because I am more than etwas. Etwas und jemand are differentiated. So jemand gab mich mir. And who is this jemand? Husserl had the same theoretical way, but he had put it in brackets. He did not speak about the donator. I quote Edith Stein. She refers back to Husserl and says that he misses something in his idea. Husserl said, life of man is nothing else than a way to God, in a philosophical way. I try to reach this aim without theological proofs, without theological methods, namely, to come to God without God. Husserl said this strange sentence, ich will zu Gott kommen ohne Gott, only by thinking. I must, so to say, eliminate God from my scientific work to open a way to God for others. So this is a self-testimony of Husserl. Ich will mit den Mitteln des Denkens zu Gott kommen, aber ohne Gott. To the contrary, Stein had a contrasting opinion. Philosophy cannot explain the sense of being without doubts only about my existence. My existence is secret from the beginning, in the very beginning, secret for me in the very death. But I can open these doubts when I acknowledge another one who put me into life. Formally, that is self-transcendence. We had it already. That's a formal way to describe it. But we can also describe it in a material way. That means I can come, and I quote her now, from my metaphysics that wants to obtain objective truth and does not want to be only a voluntary construction. I can come to the revealed truth. So, I end now. The orientation on absolute being, on an absolute life, on an absolute person is Edith Stein's general aim. And here she is meeting John Paul, or better to say Karl Wojtyła, because his personalism is the philosophy, what he explained on the traces of Max Scheler, not so much Edith Stein. I think he did not read her because she was not published yet. But the personalism of this highest life, whatever, or of the absolute life is also clear. I quote Edith Stein, and that's my very last sentence, excuse me. I have to say it because it's very fine quotation. I read it in English and then I read it in German. The senseful human answer to its divine origin, die sinnvolle menschliche Antwort auf den göttlichen Ursprung is recognizing, loving and serving, and blissful joy in recognizing, loving and serving. All that is reception and acceptation in one. It is free donation of oneself into this given life. I read it in German. Sein Erkennen, Lieben und Dienen. Und selige Freude im Erkennen, Lieben und Dienen. Das alles ist Empfangen und Annehmen zugleich. Freie Hingabe seiner selbst in dieses geschenkte Leben hinein. Thank you for your listening. Thank you for your patience.